answer this question, first of all, remember what a test statistic is? What's a test statistic? I've written one of them. One of them is on the board in front of you. When I say test statistic, which one of those numbers is it? It's the z, okay? The z equals 6.24. This is one of the ones from the homework that we did. I think it was question 14. Is that correct? I try to remember sort of when the homework. We had a really strong, really high z-score, a really high test statistic, and the p-value was about 0. Remember that? We did that right before the quiz. How can I use, without looking at the p-value, well, first of all, before we go on, what did we end up doing with a really small p-value? Did we reject the null or fail to reject the null? We rejected it, right? So this was our conclusion based on the p-value. Okay, we know how to do that. We can actually compare the z to the corresponding z star and have the same conclusion. Sometimes AP has you do that as opposed to look at p-values. Most often they talk about p-values, but on occasion this happens as well. Who remembers what z star means? What does it go with? The confidence interval. It's your critical value, correct? It's your critical z value. It's part of that margin of error. And it corresponded to, or you had to know the confidence level. Do you remember that? And so if we dealt with 95% confidence, there was a certain z star, and 99% confidence, there was a certain z star. Well, believe it or not, your alpha corresponds to, or is actually a complement of, the confidence level. So if we're talking about a 95% confidence interval, that corresponds, or that's the same thing as dealing with the significance of 0.05, because those are complements of one another. What is the z star that's associated with 95% confidence? 1 point what? Remember? 1.96, okay? We can actually take these two values here, won't let me highlight today, that's fine, and compare them. And based on that comparison, have the same conclusion. So there are two ways to reject the null is what I'm trying to tell you here. The first way to reject the null is to have p-value less than alpha. That also means that you reject the null. Do you agree? When we have a small p-value, we reject the null. The second way to reject the null, if we're not talking about p-values, is if your z star is less than your z, or your critical value is less than your test statistic, you also can reject the null. So there are, in fact, two ways to do that. I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. It may or may not come up in a future question. I just wanted to make sure that we looked at that. So from here on out, when we're looking at hypothesis testing, we will also compare our test statistic to our critical value, just as a kind of a double whammy, okay? But they should both give you the same conclusion. Fair enough? Small p-values and, I guess, large test statistics, right? All right, any questions about that? All right, just wanted to make sure we talked about that. I don't know if it'll let me. It won't. I'm going to have to go back here and click on it. So the quiz that you guys just took dealt very heavily with context, didn't it? It asked you to, what was the meaning of a p-value and lots of reading. Would you agree? You're supposed to say yes. Yes, okay. When we look at a problem that deals with hypothesis testing, and for now we really only know how to do a one proportion z-test, okay? So that's all we know how to do, and that's okay. That's just what we know how to do, and that's fine. What is the point, or what are we doing at the end of our hypothesis test? What is step 4? What are we actually doing? A conclusion. We're making a decision, aren't we? We are deciding, yes, the null is true, or we're rejecting it, or we're failing to reject it. Would you agree? We're making a decision. And a lot of what you did in the quiz was looking at situations and making decisions. So there are two kinds of, well, if I make a decision, there's two ways I can be wrong. okay? I can make a decision, well, and be wrong in two ways. And those ways are a type 1 error or a type 2 error, okay? Sorry, it won't let me scroll up or down right now. SmartBird's being a little funky. But I can either, for a type 1 error, I can either say, I reject the null. My p-value was small enough that I reject it, okay? It's wrong. But maybe I made a mistake somewhere, and actually it's true. That would be a type 1 error, okay, where I mistakenly reject a true null hypothesis. I'm actually going to write this on the sideboard as well, so we have it in front of us, so we know what we can say here. So a type 1 error, and we do use these Roman numerals for whatever reason, okay? Type 1 error is when I mistakenly reject a true null. So I reject the null, but it's actually true. Okay? So it's a mistake. It's an error. The statistics we gathered, the p-value was low for some reason, okay? But it was an error. It's a mistake. The second kind of error happens when I don't reject the null. I failed to reject the null. My p-value was too high. I didn't reject it. But in fact, I should have. And I should have rejected it because it's false. Okay? So those are the two kinds of possible errors that we could make. One's called a type 1 error and one's called a type 2 error. The consequences of making these errors sometimes can be pretty serious. And it really depends on the situation about which one is worse. I will say more often than not, a type 2 error is more serious, has larger consequences, but maybe or maybe not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have us look at a situation, and I want us to first tell me what the type 1 and 2 errors are, and then 2, tell me what the consequences of each are going to be. So here is a situation. I'm trying to figure out the effectiveness of a new drug, and I'm trying to this drug is going to slow down the growth of some tumors that are existing, okay? The null hypothesis is always an equal statement, okay? The proportion of growth without treatment is the same as with treatment, okay? What is the null saying? That the treatment didn't change, or the growth of tumors didn't change. Would you agree? The proportion's the same. Okay? The alternative, aren't we hoping to slow down the growth? Hence why it's less than, okay? So we're saying the proportion is actually less than, or the percent, the growth in tumors is less than without treatment. So the treatment's working. Does that make sense if I say it that way? So I'm going to write it in context. The treatment works. Okay. How about for A? Does the treatment work for A? It doesn't work, does it? The null hypothesis, not A, the first part, sorry. The null hypothesis, the treatment doesn't work, right? It's just stayed the same. The null hypothesis, not effective. Okay. I don't like to say not different. We'll just say, I'll just leave it blank. Doesn't work. All right. How about a type 1 error in context? What would it be in this situation? So remember, the null hypothesis here was that the treatment didn't work, right? Nothing worked. It stayed the same. So what do we say? So we say the treatment works. Our decision that we made, our conclusion that we drew, we say the treatment works when in fact it doesn't. Okay. What is the consequence of that? what would be a problem? What would be a result if we drew that conclusion? What kind of problem would that occur in the context? We say the treatment works, but it doesn't. So what are we doing to people? Giving them treatment that's not going to do anything, right? There could be side effects of, I don't know, whatever. Some treatments have lots of, you lose your hair because of whatever side effect I gave you. I don't know what it could be, but you go through a treatment that's not going to do anything, right? So you're given extra medicine or extra treatment for no reason. That could cause problems, right? I mean, who knows what, it's not going to treat what you have, but maybe it's going to cause something else. Would you agree? So how would I write that in words, do you think? What would you say? Give me a sentence that would sum that up. Lexi, any ideas? How would I sum it up? What would happen to the person? What's going to happen to that person who's going to be given the treatment? Possibly get more sick, right? Because they're not getting treated. There could be adverse side effects for a non-working treatment. Want to say it that way? I don't know. Give me a sentence. Someone give me a sentence. Lexi, give me a sentence. The false treatment. That's great. The false treatment could cause more problems. Could cause other problems. How about that? Could cause different problems. And I'll say side effects, whatever. Okay? Good. All right. How about a type 2 treatment? I'm sorry, 2 treatment. 2 error. Type 2 error. What's happening there? The drug actually works, or the treatment works, but we say it doesn't. Uh-oh. Okay? So we say the treatment doesn't work when it does. What's the consequence of that? They don't get a treatment that exists, right? So we know there's something out there that will cure whatever ailment they have, or it'll cure these tumors. We have an actual treatment. But guess what? We say it doesn't work. So what's the consequence? We're assuming the tumors cause death, but that could definitely be, right? The tumor continues to grow, and it didn't need to, right? So not only, up here we're giving somebody a treatment that's not going to work. So they get some extra side effects. It could be bad. They could lose, their hair or something, but they're not dying, right? Necessarily here. We have a working treatment. Do you see why that's a little bit more problematic? No? But they don't have a cure anyway. But here we have a cure, and I'm withholding it from them. But nanny, nanny, boo, boo, you can't have this. It's like that guy with the AIDS drug, right? When he marked up the prices of the drug. We have your treatment, but you can't have it, right? That reminds me of a type 2 error. He's an error, right? Sorry, my opinion. But I shouldn't have been reflected my opinion. I apologize. But, if you have a treatment, shouldn't they have access to it? Here we don't have a treatment at all. We're just trying to, I don't know, we're saying maybe this will work, maybe this will work. We don't know. No, you know that it works. That's the problem. It does work. Depends how you look at it. And again, I'm not going to say that one is always going to be one. You can make an argument in either direction. I like that you're thinking about these things. This is awesome. It bothers me if there's something out there that will fix the issue and we don't let them have it, right? That's kind of where I was getting with that. So again, context would be death. tumors grow death. Okay? Dramatic. I don't know. So it's important, what we want to think about, and you're going to be reading in this chapter, because I'm going to officially assign you to read it. I want you don't have to outline the chapter per se, but I want you to be thinking about, as you read, not only type 1 and type 2 errors, but there's also going to be some other definitions that I want you to think about. Let's try one more. Should we try one more? Let's do that. This is an extra practice before I get to the next part, or give you the homework. So let's do this one. Let's do type 1 and type 2 errors. Here. So we decide the bomb-sniffing dogs aren't working at the airport. We developed something new. Okay, we got a sensor. And we want to see if it detects these explosive devices. Okay? So we got 4 boxes, one with explosives in a room, and see if our device identifies it. Okay? Why is the null hypothesis 0.25? 1 out of 4, right? 1 out of 4 of the boxes has it. So that's going to be just for guessing you get that probability. Okay? We're hoping that our device works and correctly identifies it with a bigger probability than you would have by chance, right? By chance, 1 out of 4 of the times you're going to get it right. So we want our probability to be greater. Does that make sense, alternatively, for the hypothesis? What's a type 1 error? So type 1 means that, well, first of all, let's put context here. Okay? Here means that the device works, right? So our thing works. And here is that it doesn't work. Would you agree? Okay. I like to kind of write that off to the side to help me a little bit. Bring it up here for me, Sam. Put it on my, thanks. All right, so type 1 would be what, Matthew? I'm sorry? What did you say? We reject it. So we reject the null. But it actually, so we reject the null. We reject, so we reject that it doesn't work, right? But it actually is true, right? So what does that mean? We reject that it doesn't work.
So we're saying it works, but it doesn't work.
Right, we say it works, but it doesn't work. Okay? But it doesn't. What's the problem with that? Death. Right? We think our device works. Guess what? It don't. Boom. Okay. Anyway, the point is that if we have this device and we think that it works and we say that it works but it doesn't, that's a problem, right? Big time. Death. All right, here's where a type 1 error is a really big situation, right? How about a type 2 error? What's happening here? We don't reject it, but it's wrong. So we say, we don't reject it, so we say it doesn't work when it actually does. What's the problem with that? Is this one death? I don't think so. We say it doesn't work. So we have a product that will work out there, one that really will detect devices. It's going to work, but we don't use it. Waste of money. Well, right, it's greater than 0.25. It works more than by chance. Okay? But do you see how a type 1 error in this case might actually be a worse situation, whereas before it would have been a type 2? So it just depends on the situation that you have. So you're going to be reading the next chapter, okay? And the next chapter does talk about type 1 and type 2 errors. And what you need to be doing, in addition to thinking about type 1 and type 2 errors, you need to be thinking about a couple of other vocabulary words that are going to jump out at you, okay? So obviously your type 1 and 2 errors are things you need to think about. I also want you to think about something called the power of the test. And we haven't talked about it here, but we will talk about it a little bit on Friday, okay? And then on Friday, we'll talk about the power of the test, a little bit go over the homework that I'm going to assign, and then you will have a practice test to work on because you have an actual test next Wednesday, correct? And we'll obviously go over the quiz and stuff like that as well on Friday. So to power the test, type 1 and type 2 errors, and let me go ahead and tell you what your homework is going to be. So let me officially assign the problems. I didn't do that in my first block, or second block, whatever. So this is, sorry, I'm in the wrong chapter, chapter 20. There we go. All right. So I want you to obviously read, this is chapter 20. Okay, so read chapter 20. And I want you to do the following problems. And they really are going to be just to identify the type 1 and 2 errors and tell me what the what their issues were. Okay? So that's going to be problems numbers 27 through problem 30. So it's really only four problems. So problems 27 through 30. Okay, so only 4 problems. There is A, B, C, and D in each of those situations, but just wanted to kind of put that out there for you, okay? Oh, I'm sorry. I have 2 more. I apologize. 27, 30. You're going to do 34 and 35. Sorry about that. Those as well. Okay? So you have 6 problems to do. Should be all right. And we'll go from there.